It's 9:30 on Monday morning. I've just started work and I'm checking through my emails. HR suddenly contacts me and it's urgent. They want me to interview two candidates for a Scrum Master role. Fine, I'm always happy to help. Oh, but it's urgent, so they need it done by end of day. Yeah, okay, I've got a little bit of time spare this afternoon, so we fix up the times. They give me the names of the candidates and send me over the CVs. Okay, no problem. Later on that day, I have a little chat with my boss, and it turns out that he has actually interviewed one of these candidates and already rejected him. So what's going on? Why am I interviewing a rejected candidate? Then I have a look at the second candidate's CV, and she seems to be an administrator. So why am I interviewing an administrator for a Scrum Master role? I go back to HR and say, look, what the hell is going on here? And he explains that it was because it was very, very urgent. They cut a few corners and tried to do a few things in parallel, and it got a bit chaotic. Yeah, okay. At the end of the conversation, it turns out that I don't actually have to interview either one of these candidates. But hey, I've just wasted 2 hours of my day dealing with this mess. Hi, I'm Adrian Baker from Agile Horizons, and what we're looking at today is how we can fix some rather chaotic processes like the one we've just seen using Agile tools and principles. Brackets, we're not doing Scrum. If you think Agile is all about doing Scrum, think again. So let's start off with a few Agile principles which will help us guide us through this whole process. First principle, make your work visible. This comes into the Scrum Guide, comes into Kanban. It's sometimes called transparency or visualization. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. Make your work visible. Then moving on to principle number 2, this is collaboration. And collaboration is key throughout the Agile frameworks. Now, what we saw in that little scenario where they're trying to recruit a Scrum Master was, well, they were collaborating, but if truth be told, they weren't doing a great job of it. So we're going to look at how, if we make the work visible, it will aid collaboration. On to the next thing, which is a tool, and we're going to be making use of a Kanban board. If you happen to be in an office all in the same place and there's a whiteboard there, great, use a physical Kanban board. But what most people do these days is to use an online Kanban board, and that's what we're going to dig into right now. So this is a Kanban board that we have in front of us. Many organizations will use a tool called Jira, but what I'm doing here today is using a tool called Trello, which is very lightweight, very easy to set up and easy to use, and will be just fine for this little demonstration. So we have 4 columns, as you can see in our board. First one is the backlog. So this is our to-do list. These are all the things that we need to do, such as reviewing CVs and conducting interviews and so on. When we start work on one of these, it will go into in progress, then into in review, and then into done. So that's how it flows across the board from left to right, from the backlog through to done. If you think this looks a little bit like Scrum, it looks a bit like it. Scrum teams use a board like this, but we're not doing Scrum. We don't have sprints, no sprint planning, no Scrum Master. We're not doing that. We're just using a Kanban board. So let's take a look at the cards that are sitting on this board. So we can see that they are all, as I mentioned, sitting in the backlog, which is our to-do list. I'm just going to open up one of these cards. So this is round 1 interviews. First thing we can see is that I put a label on here, Scrum Master label. You can see there are some other labels there, there's color coding, just using the Scrum Master label. Also, I thought it would be a good idea if we put in the description the list of candidates. Now, this is to avoid individual interviewers, people involved, having their own lists on their own hard drives. Here, we're centralizing it, which makes it visible, which makes collaboration a lot easier. And we can see at a glance here, Adam has been rejected, and we have 4 other candidates to be interviewed. So coming out of there, what happens is once we start work on one of these work items, let's say confirming the budget. So when we start work on that, we move it over to in progress. and then eventually move everything over to done. So we're looking at a smooth flow of work items from the backlog over to done. Now it's time for another Agile principle. So the next principle that we're going to be using, principle number 3, is limit your work in progress. So this means try to avoid multitasking or switching regularly from one task to another. Do one thing, finish it, and then go to another thing. There's several reasons for this. I mean, first of all, if you're trying to do too many things at once, you'll end up with a very cluttered Kanban board, and that doesn't make your work very visible. And then secondly, as humans with limited brain capacity, if we try and switch from one task to another, it always takes a little bit of time to adjust and try and remember where we were with that task. So the streamlined approach is focus on one thing at a time. Let's see how that relates to our Kanban board. So back here to the Kanban board, and you will remember the little scenario that happened on my Monday morning. So let's kind of recreate that. I think at that point, the budget had already been done, the job spec had already been created, they'd done their advertising. So what they were doing was reviewing CVs. Round 1 interview and round 2 interviews were all being done in parallel. So basically there was too much work in progress. And as we can see at a glance, we've got 3 cards in the in progress column, and this looks like it is too much. Individual teams can decide on what is their maximum number of cards they want in any column. And here it looks like probably 2 is enough, maybe even only 1. So that's up to the teams to decide what is their work in progress limit. But clearly, we had too much work in progress and it was causing chaos. 2 more Agile principles. Principle number 4, minimize waste. This comes from an area of Agile called Lean. And the idea here is that anything that we do, any work that does not deliver any sort of value, that is called waste. And back to my Monday scenario, the morning when I spent time running around trying to sort out what was going on, that was waste because it didn't deliver any value. And also, had I gone on with those interviews in the afternoon, which I didn't really need to do, that would also have been waste. Moving on to principle number 5, this is Kaizen, which means continuous improvement. And how this works is if we stop periodically and look at our process, what's going well, what can be improved, then we can make sure that we improve our processes and ways that we work together going forward. Let's see how that relates to the Kanban board. So back to our Kanban board, we can see that the very last ticket in the backlog is Kaizen. And if I open that, we can see that at the end of the process, we can do a bit of reflection, maybe have a discussion within the team, and we can look at what went well, what could be better, and what we're going to do differently next time. So obviously we can document this. We can say that we didn't make our work visible enough, collaboration was lacking, and so next time we're going to use a Kanban board. We're going to make sure that we make everything visible, limit our work in progress, etc. So this can all be documented in our Kanban card. So that's about it for today. We've looked at how we can take a rather chaotic process and apply Agile principles and Agile tools to greatly streamline the way that that process works. And obviously we can apply Agile tools and principles to many other different workflows in many other business areas. If you like what you've heard, over at Agile Horizons, we have many courses that go into these tools and processes in a lot more detail with a lot more time. So go over to agilehorizons.com. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. I'll do my best to answer. And lastly, thanks very much for watching.